let's go.
I could chit chat to you all night, and people could just sit and watch. But I think they get
Yeah.
Cool. Well, hi everyone, and welcome to tonight's session. And we have back with us tonight the wonderful Nola Turner-Jensen to talk more about her work. So just before we get started and I hand over to Nola, I would just like to acknowledge that I'm coming to you from the unceded land of the Ngunnawal people, and I'd like to pay my respects to all elders past, present and emerging, and also like to pay my respects to you, Nola, to you and your elders and your family. And great to have you with us. I'm really looking forward to this session. So without further ado, I'm going to turn my camera off and hand it over to you, my dear.
Thank you, darling. Appreciate you. Hello, everybody. Pardon my background. We're moving in. So we've just sort of had to, I can't wait till the PowerPoint comes on. Welcome, everybody, from wherever you are. I just want to acknowledge that I'm coming from Yugambeh country, which is not my ancestral country, which is Wiradjuri people, but a welcome in our language is Nadu Gamba Nariniga Nankawantu, which means hello, welcome. Hope you are well. My name is Nola Turner-Jensen, of course, and I'm Wiradjuri Aboriginal Australian. My mother was Aboriginal, my father was Irish, and I think his mum was Scottish. So it's I'm a Bitsa, of course, and mixed heritage Australian, which is an interesting journey in Australia, in a colonised country, when you have that heritage. But of course, I grew up in Aboriginal communities in Western New South Wales, and that's who I align with. I definitely have a black brain. I absolutely know that, growing up with my family. So I might just go to the PowerPoint if I can, and yeah, there we go. So Mother Earth, Father Sky is what you'll be hearing about today, and the research project I'm doing to restore the place names of my Wiradjuri ancestors, which is in Australia, in New Zealand, and New South Wales. Oh wow, I've had a long day. How to re-engage with sacredness and honour your own totems of Australia, or wherever you are, because we all emerged from our totem ancestors, and we all must honour our ancestors and our mother's country at all times. And that's, you know, what underlies and frames the Aboriginal world, is this honouring of our mother and Mother Earth, Father Sky. So here is a map, which is a map you've probably seen maybe over the last few days. All the colours are the different Aboriginal language groups across Australia, and this remarkable map identifies how we had our own language groups, and there was over 250 language groups and just over 800 dialects within, you know, multiple dialects within each language group. So it is definitely a patchwork of amazing and ancient and unique, you know, languages. And at the moment, out of all those languages and dialects, there's 120 that are still surviving and many that are endangered. So to lose them is to lose some precious history and knowledge that is nowhere else on earth. This is Wiradjuri. It's the second biggest language group in Australia. So there's a lot of us probably not compared to New York or something like that. But, you know, for us, we're a big language group, and we're about 204,000 kilometres squared in land, or 79,000 square miles for those that still talk in miles. And one of the most beautiful, I think, statements I've read in all my research and sitting with elders was Durugara Mayan Bangwani, which is, what country do you belong to in Wiradjuri? But it's a powerful question that becomes even more potent when you realise that Guni, the end word that you heard me say, means mother. So even when we're asking the question of what country do you come from, we're asking, where is your mother? And it wasn't until I heard a few people, you know, relate that question that I realised they were saying Guni, and I started talking to them about that, and I just thought it was so beautiful, because in the end, Mother Earth, Father Sky is our framework. And when I talk about Mother Earth, I talk about our belief is that all things attached to the earth and under it are female, and all that are above it or on it, and in the sky world is father, male. So if you would think of it as Auntie explained, when it rains, the water coming down, the rain is male. And when it hits the earth, the female, it fertilizes the female, and that's where everything grows and new life happens. So that's really what we frame our whole life on, is that that difference between mother and father, but also the synergy between the two and how they must work together and be a mirror image of each other and live in mutualism to create a world and honour each other. So there's our beautiful language group, and here's Sydney. Might give you a bit of geographical location to know where it's near, where I think we're sort of at the base of the Blue Mountains from Sydney, and then right out about 7 hours drive across the Wiradjuri country until you get to the edge. But let's talk about identity, because really when we look at our maps and our homelands and our Guni, our mother, it is, and the totemic ancestors that we're attached to, is all about identity. And in our world, life is a constant process of layer upon layer of discoveries of our identity, and the associated relationships responsible to people and country. These layers reveal the ancient laws, the standards and rules of a once great and powerful society. In Wiradjuri Aboriginal language group, a person is born with several names for different reasons, dependent on what the other person needs to know, or where you are located, or what level of initiation you are at. Your name is fluid, and it moves and changes to match the moment you are in, just like the rivers. The extraordinary purpose of your name in Wiradjuri society is used to know your location, family, who you can marry, relationships, responsibility, ritual status, and to follow law. This stems only from your mother, so we're a maternal law-based people. The father in relation to identity is largely ignored, except in men's business, sacred initiation time. At birth, we are all put in a skin group, one of two. In Wiradjuri, you are either Mugala or Butharong. So as soon as you were born, you were placed in your mother's skin. In my family, it was the Mallee. I mean, in my language group, it's the Mallee or it's the river. So it's away from the river or on the river. And that's the separation of the two groups. You could only ever be in one skin group and not in both. And you could never marry to the people within your skin. Some people go as far as saying it's poison blood in that same skin because you can't marry. This is the marriage totem groupings. This is our connection, where you start to see our connection, our identity to Earth. And so the river people up the top, that's their marriage totems. So each of them, we are born either a bee or we're born a kangaroo if we're in Butharong. If we're down in the grass people with the Mallee, Mugala, we are born one of those. And that tells you who you can marry. So people will ask you your marble, and you would say, black duck, or gammon, which is grey kangaroo. So, and then they would know whether they could marry you or not. And, you could either be happily ever after or, it's a no. So, wrong blood. So, everybody knew who they could and could not marry according to the animals. Now, there were all animals that were the marriage totems, and these animals here, we intermarried with up to 18 different language groups that surrounded our country. So there's a lot of, cross the track sort of relationships going on, but our inheritance still came from our mother's country. So my mother was a Martha, and she was brown snake, and because you're placed in the opposite, in the same grouping of your mother, I would have been born native bee. So if you could imagine, I mean, you yourself, wherever you are, you could think, was I born on the water, near the water, or was I born away? And you start to think about those totem ancestors in your area that you're immediately connected to. You share their blood, you share everything with them because they are on the same ground as you. You drink the water and you're drinking them. And when we're born, in the old days, Wiradjuri, which is called our burul is the very spot that you are born, that very piece of ground where you are born. And what happens when baby is born, the placenta is immediately buried in that spot so that your blood mixes with the blood of your ancestors. And it just connects you to that place forever. This is the butcher bird, which is like a location identity, which is, part of who we are. So you've gone from your marriage, you've got your skin, you've got your marriage, you know who you can marry, you're all good. And now you can, this is Darawan or butcherbird in English, is very special because he helps you with, he's your guardian, he's your strength totem. So there's already three identities that you have the moment you are born. My Duray, which is my mother's country, that's our hunting grounds, that's our ancestral home that we inherit. We are connected to all those animals and plants upon that ground. Duray means having. So is this in Dharawal, it'd be Dharawal Duray, which is having the butcher bird, which would be one of my names. So if somebody said, "Where you from, Nola?" and I said Dharawal Duray, they'd know exactly where I was located in Australia, based on, in the old days that is, based on the fact that they understand that is the country that's having the butcher bird, that cares for the butcher bird. So the cultural practices, the songs and ceremonies, they all help reveal your relationship to birds and to animals and to insects and the land and the water, to place and to members of your family now and from the past. So those are the practices, and that's why we undertake them. This leads to an understanding of your story, your inside identity. For instance, a totem identifies features and strengths from the inside to its holder, and multiple totems associated to that person, like I've just identified, by implication reveal much about my inside and your inside non-physical place and purpose in the world. I never feel alone because I've always got my ancestors with me, whether they're an ant or a spider or a bird. I'm surrounded by them no matter where I am. So thus, in Aboriginal culture and society, we are taught our place within the laws, principles and activities by which the natural world was created. So we're in there, immersed in it. We're part of it. I was born a bee. My dream guardian is a butcher bird. My mother was the brown snake. So we're immersed in this beautiful world of these genius animals that were so important to our survival. In Wiradjuri culture, one of the most honoured animals is the ant and the bee. So these are insects that they understood, looked after, because we have the amazing wattle trees and gum trees in Australia. Well, they require ants and flies and wasps and bees to actually pollinate and for them to grow. Without those animals assisting them, they wouldn't grow. So they help each other. And when you think of a sugar ant, who is this incredible ant who rounds up like a farmer, a cowboy. He rounds up the aphids and the little grubs, and he herds them out. They herd them over to where the nectar is, and they gorge them on this nectar, and then herd them back to the place that's above the ant's nest. And every time they go to the toilet, they drop down this sweet nectar, and the sugar ants feast out on it. So they talk about mutualism in action, but that happens every night in Australia, and I think about them sometimes rounding up their aphids. So the main living things in your area that you are connected to, which is part of our research, is also about food and survival, of course. They're practical people. It is law your location totem ancestor was utilised as important food and was at home in that place. So whether it was a certain native tree, a fish, a snake, or a galah. Now we'll go. And so when you see all the information about that butcher bird, because I'm responsible for that bird, and I would have to know everything about that bird, and that's part of your responsibility. You can't have connection without knowledge. And that is a lesson we learn all the time in Aboriginal culture, is you cannot have connection without knowledge. And so we have to know everything there is to know about the relationships, or what our ancestors require for them to survive. So I'll go on to the next one. So this is about the banning of our language, our place names, really. There was a complete ban till the mid-1900s, actually, from the 1800s to the mid-1900s, of my people's language. We couldn't speak them. We couldn't say their place names. We couldn't call our family by their language names. We couldn't speak our own names. Everything changed. And, you know, can you imagine if I said, for those that are English speakers, you can't speak English anymore. You must speak Wiradjuri. It's language is such a big part of your identity and your personality, and you know how you see the world, and you know, it's such a huge strength within you, and to be taken away is a crime, definitely, and certainly something that's hurt us. And we're desperately looking at ways to bring that amazing language back, because it is the most beautiful language. Every word tells a story. It's not literal. We don't call place names Kevin or Sandy Creek. We have descriptive names that honour that geographic place. So at the moment we battle and we're working very hard to restore. And part of my project is to they're already there, is to have the elders confirm what's already known. The beautiful language place names across my country, those hundreds and hundreds of kilometres, but every place had the most amazing and beautiful descriptive names in Wiradjuri language. You'll see on this map, this is an early settler map, and one thing that is positive about these maps, when the early settlers came and took the land, they would ask the local Wiradjuri person, what's this place called? It was sort of a novelty. And some people were genuine about it, but most it was a novelty. And thank heavens, a lot of they asked that question because a lot of them called their properties and their farms the local traditional Wiradjuri name. And so for us as researchers at the moment, we're able to look at these maps and actually all those names that aren't English, like Mahonga, you can see there, or Barangong, or Naurami, or I don't know, Banuk. You can see they're not English, so you pull them out and you go, okay, these Wiradjuri, these could be Wiradjuri, and then you take them to the Wiradjuri dictionary and to the language holders, and that's what we've been doing for 3 years, and I've been leading that project, and it's outstanding because our places can't be archived, even though they've been archived in these huge places, libraries and museums, but our names are sitting there silently waiting for us to speak them again. And so, you know, when you think of our place, when we think of our place, it's we name places by their purpose, and so it could be by the sunlight casting deeper shadows in the afternoon, or how a place looks under the moon. It could be it's a name that unites us with nature's activities and species in a bond of mutual life-giving and seeing. It is a worldview in which a human is part of nature, not distinct, sharing with them the same essence of living, loving, and being. It could be a flower that appears multiple times, the peculiar flatness of a rock, the arc of a river. We have a water name that is named after the shape of a boomerang. It is a different way of thinking of place. It is about connection, and it is frozen in time forever. It is the direction of a running water, trickling in a certain way. Does it bubble? Does it hum? Which way do the floating reeds float or sway? This place's name can be born in the mountains where a spring is sprung from up high. Its origin bears its name rushing or crashing down. A name is not location without its relationship to being. It captures a time of day when the animals are sometimes seen. Ancient names can be momentary and fleeting. This is the magic they bring. It is an invisible connection with something that surprises you and mystifies you if you take the time to ponder it. It is the whispers of your father's father and your mother's mother every time you speak it. Our names come from unseen powers and beings whose activity formed a seen place. It is the linguistic bequeath of our ancestors that defines belonging from prized cosmic settings above you in space. It gives you a lens of nature and life, of a behaviour between a universe and man. It is a powerful yet fragile bond of interconnected laws and custom, of faithful reverence of family as the land. Our old names were concerned with similarity rather than difference, with synthesis rather than analysis, and with a symbiosis rather than separation. Life is a constant process of layer upon layer of discoveries of this identity and connection to country called from its creation. You speak a place's reason for being, and you will feel its spirits grow within your soul. Sing again its ancient identity, it will always be with you, and it will come along with me, and I too will be whole. An auntie said that to me, and I thought it was the most beautiful statement I've heard in a very long time. I'll go on to the next. Oh, did I? Oh no, that's it. We were going to play a video now, which was about water connection. What do you think we'd do about that, Fred? Or we could just keep telling stories. We can keep telling stories, that's fine. Okay, so that was the video. And Fred might put it in the chat for you guys.
Yes, and it takes some time to activate the camera.
No, we won't. We'll be right.
If you want, we can share the YouTube URL. You already did it in the chat, and also I can show it on screen. so people can click on it and watch the video. I think we should do that now.
I've put the link in the chat.
Thank you. So people can go and watch it when they want. Okay, so I grew up in Western New South Wales in a very remote area, and why are you taking over my PowerPoint, friend? I'll fight you for it. I had 5 brothers and sisters, a big family, of course, and we thought we knew our area because it was such a small area, a small populated area. We thought we knew it like the back of our hand. But doing this research of Aboriginal place names, I've realised I did not know where I grew up at all. And I think that's what shocked me the most about this research, is that it's making me look at how much I actually knew about my mother's country, and also about how others, including people who are not Aboriginal but who truly want to be connected deeply with their local landscapes and the country that they love. And so I think part of this project is the hope that it will allow everybody to connect with their mother's country, their family's ancestors and totems, and to, you know, welcome people into our skin and share our knowledge, and, you know, so that we can start walking together. What's happening, Fred? I don't know why this thing is on the screen. I'm going to click out of it. Okay, so where I grew up, there was a place called Dandaloo that was just up the road, and it was kind of, you know, it has the word loo in it. So in Australia, that means toilet, and everybody thought that was hilarious. But there was also a cow, what we called a cow, and it wasn't until learning language later in life that I realised that what the colonial people put on their maps as a cow is actually the Wiradjuri word meaning gal, and gal is means swamp, dead swamp, so a swamp that's not running. And so I realised that the word dundu actually means swan, black swan, and lee means swamp. And so when I learnt much more and became knowledgeable about my language, I realised that good old Dandaloo was actually Dundalay, which is black swan lake, or Swan Lake. I lived right near Swan Lake and I didn't know it. So when I told my family about this, everybody was so shocked, because everybody just knew it as Dandaloo. We didn't understand its story because we didn't know its name. And that language name is so critical to understanding its story and being able to honour it. And now I think of the black swans on that lake and how it's a special place, because it would have been a conservation area for the swan, and Aboriginal people would have cared for them in that place. So it saddens me if they can't get back there, because the lake is much smaller now, of course. So the Toponymy Project, we've been going, as I said, for about 3 years to try and restore the names that already existed for tens of thousands of years. But the thing that we have found, the amazing thing, is that most of the place names have to do with water. And you can see on this map, the Wiradjuri River goes up, is a major river in Wiradjuri country and in New South Wales in Australia. But you can see the difference between what they were originally down the bottom, a lot of the flows, and then up the top, because of damming and weirs, colonial people, so many weirs. I'll show you a map later, and it looks like New South Wales has the measles. There's so many. So the changing of the flow of the water and how that affects us culturally and how it even impinges on our identity. But you can see the difference between the two. So up here is, you know, what it is today, and down here is what it was, you know, prior to colonisation. And when you look here, this is a terrible picture. I'm not a cartographer. I'm a terrible at mapping, but when you look at this is that same area. This is the Wiradjuri that we did, and you can see they're all our Wiradjuri language names for all those. So they actually have the ability to restore, for people to understand what was there based on what our language name is. So, you know, and some of them are so beautiful. You can see Wiradjuri, or you can see Toponymy, which is really badly misspelt by colonial ear, but Wiradjuri, you know, these are all having. So Toponymy is having the brush-tailed wallaby. And, you know, and so you've got all these Dure names, but it's all water. We didn't know that before we started the project, but these Dures have to be attached to water. So what Aboriginal people knew about water, and one, its life, but the health of creeks is vital. Before colonial people came, we had abundant plant life perform the role of peat. Plants made the streams barely visible, retaining water, allowing slower seepage and providing protection from the high rate of evaporation in the exposed main channels. We understood that. One uncleared creek has never run dry, and there's a picture of that actually. You know, where is it? I got it out, I think. So when you look at these two creeks, the one on the right, they left the reeds and left it how Aboriginal people knew. The other one, they cleared it because they want their sheep to get to the water and their cattle. So they cleared everything away. Look at the health, and I know it should be in colour, but I could only get the black and white picture. Look at the health of this stream on your right compared to the one on your left. It's extraordinary, the difference, because all this in a very dry continent like Australia, all these reeds stopped evaporation. They created the, even when it was in drought, if it dug down, it would be wet because the reeds stopped the evaporation. And we created so many of natural weirs. We didn't stop the water or change it. We just let it trickle. So it was a slower trickle, so that way it wasn't just rushing down and evaporating or going out into the ocean and being lost. It was a trickle. And when the colonial man came and he wanted his sheep and his cattle to get to the water, well, the reeds were in their way. And so unfortunately he cleared them all. Same with the trees. And they were our protection. They were our water protection. And unfortunately, they misunderstood. They transferred how they did it in Britain to here. and you can't get two different places. It required much different management than that. But in this beautiful mapping of language and bringing back to life these amazing lyrical and descriptive words that talk about, we have over 70 different words for water. And so all the different words, descriptive words you get. So our water, bodies of water are constituted by Aboriginal people as more than just a physical domain. They are construed spiritually, socially, and durally according to the same fundamental principles as affiliations to terrestrial places in the land. The dialogic relationships in Indigenous thought between an ancestral past and its effect on human existence derives from the Aboriginal understanding of the transformative powers of the spiritual beings that inhabit those places, whether a landscape, waterscape, or a skyscape. Because Father Sky, Mother Earth, so everything on the earth is mirrored in the sky. So when you look at the Milky Way, that's Bila, Billabong. Billabong is, Billa means river in my language. So the Milky Way, which is always moving, the same as the river, is our river. So Wiradjuri practices privileged the health of each body of water. They understood the central flow of the water was the vulnerable part. Managing tributaries was essential to managing the main stream. So we knew to keep the central stream clear, but all along the side, that was its protection. That was the reeds that kept it flowing. No matter how fast or slow we wanted it, it kept it flowing. And so we only kept clear the central stream. And I already said that one. I love the river pictures. I should have used more of them. Now this is a remarkable bit of mapping, and they were much better at cartography than I was. I am. But this was work done, I don't know quite when, but this is part of the Macquarie River, which is, one of the most important rivers, and you would have been learning a bit about it. But what this amazing person did, he actually took the towns of colonial world and the modern world out. He erased them off that map of that river. And these are actually the clan groups and what is our Durays, which is their hunting grounds, all along this river. And so that's what we're trying to achieve with our rivers, with Wiradjuri, and we're doing it. But yeah, I've got to learn some more mapping skills. So this is incredible. When you look at this, these are the details, the place names of the 7 clans of the Tenkan Gold of the Korong of South Australia, illustrating the detailed nomenclature. I don't know what that word is. I suppose it's the descriptive. Each place name has a meaning tied to the physiography, history, botany, and mythology of the locality, which I think is a really great description of that every one of those names tells a story and is connected to the animals, plants, sky world in that place. Much better than the town of Kevin. I got to stop that, but I saw Kevin on a map one day and I just thought, how is that honouring that place? How is that honouring? Maybe it's honouring Kevin. But so this is, yeah, the really remarkable map. This is just an example of some of our over 70 water names. You know, you've got Galangural, which is deep water hole. You've got Bamaman, long water hole. You know, Nulburnham, water hole is wide and deep. Nullaman, long water hole, which is downhill. Wawi, which is our rainbow serpent, our serpent that's in the deepest water holes. It's the men's place. Wala, which is water hole in the rocks. Winyu, water hole without water. Yuri Yahweh, it's a narrow water hole because Yuri in Wiradjuri means a scar or a scratch. Bagamba, which is a boomerang bend in the creek, the same shape as the boomerang. And Gulta, which is the glitter of water, of light on the water. You know how the water, you know, sometimes you see the sun and it just sort of glitters across it. Well, we have a name for that water. And I just think that's so beautiful. Because, you know, I would never have thought of that as a type of water or a place name for water. But if that's what they saw there, then that's what they saw. So it's really beautiful. So in our, for thousands of years, the rivers, swamps and creeks of Wiradjuri country has comprised of the traditional Narambang, which is country. At the time of European invasion in the early 1800s, we had a quite densely populated, not really compared to now. But that's because we had a lot of flat land and rich resources. We got documented evidence of hundreds of middens, which is our shell sort of rubbish tips, if you like, ovens and campsites, which testament to thousands of years of Wiradjuri resource use and occupation. In a totemic society like Wiradjuri or Aboriginal people, who you are as an individual is not important. Who you are in relationship to everything above and below the ground in your local living landscape is. Intimate knowledge, observation, songs, deep listening, and ceremonies all help reveal what is your relationship to every living thing. Life is one of the other names, you should say, is when a woman first gets pregnant, and they sit and listen and smell and observe deeply, and they be present with all their senses to identify that child's totem. And I always encourage all my friends who get pregnant, whether they're Aboriginal or not, to do that. To me, it's ceremony in Australia, and every Australian person should do it. And I always say to them, you know, is it a bird? Is it the sound of a bird? Is it the smell of a plant? Is it is it a running spider across their window? But you will hear or see something living if you listen deep enough. But I also say to not cheat, because we can't all be powerful eagles or beautiful sunbirds. There's got to be, you know, little lizards as well. And of course, you know, I talk to them about the ant and how without the ant, just about all the trees in Australia wouldn't survive. So even the tiniest ant is more important than the eagle in many ways. In the water names, we add stem names. So we have things like sand or reeds. Does it have reeds or sand? Is it receding? Is it moving? Is it still? What colours does it have? Is it a fishing or camping area? And so we add all these stem names in, and they make the place name, and they tell its story. So that's the remarkable thing about having a place name that describes the purpose of wherever you are. This is what we're working on. It's see how not as beautiful as that other map, but this is what I'm working on. This is the Macquarie River, which is a really big river and important river in Wiradjuri country, or Womble, as we call it. It's being named after Macquarie, Lachlan Macquarie in Australia. He was a colonist. It's not a nice man, but never mind. So it kind of goes the wrong way. Oh, what's happening? It goes the wrong way in that it goes from west to east. It should go the other way, but never mind. So this is what this did, though. It did a remarkable thing by identifying all the language names along the river. It started to identify patterns, and you will see that when you start to see all the D's, and then all of a sudden they start to be W. And here is all the B's, and they all of a sudden start to be all the Y's. And we started to realize that our brilliant ancestors naturally named our clan groups, and they allocated the different letters and sounds, stem sounds, and to certain areas. So in this area, we found, which is where I grew up actually, we found there was over 35 durays. So that section of country would have been not chopped up, but allocated to those durays, and each of them would have to care. Like this one is the tawny frogmouth, this one's the kangaroo rat, this one's the sugar glider possum, this one's the Australian bittern bird, this is the swan dundle, this one is the grey-tailed duck. So that meant that all the people of that area back from the river would have had to care for that totem ancestor. They couldn't hunt him. That was others to do that. So people would come and ask permission. Like here, they would come to hunt the duck, and they would have to get permission. So that was what we found along the Macquarie River, and it was just so exciting because we had no idea that would happen. And so our Mayin, which is Mayin in Wiradjuri, means people. So it's very exciting to perhaps have the ancestors talk about, as my son, to start to help us get our clan groups back and restore some of that knowledge that's just been sitting there waiting for us. But yeah, I'm hoping to find someone one day to help me do mapping much better. Here is, we did with the elders. We asked some of the elders to tell us, everybody, 300 years ago, I think we said 1,000 years ago, sorry, who they would have had to consider in their kinship, in their family. And this is what they came up with. All these remarkable, amazing, so the plants that contribute to your family survival, that's your duray and your mayin. Your language group totems, your sacred places, the cousin children from father's side, cousin children from mother's side, mother's cousins, places in your area, father's cousins, ancestors, aunties, uncles, sky world beings, grandparents, animals, everybody. So imagine that's a massive kinship system that you were responsible for every day, their physical, mental, economical survival. And I think that's still in Australia today for Aboriginal people. So we have this big kinship system that we still feel responsible for all the time. And, you know, it might be in the middle of a city. Like I live on the Gold Coast of Australia and not on country. But, you know, I have transported my kinship system with me, and I still make sure that I fulfill my cultural responsibility every day, sometime every day. I make sure that responsibility back to my mother country is fulfilled, and I can sleep easy knowing that. So what's the next one? So this is about, when I was talking to you before about how changing, when the colonizers came in, you think you just got Uber Eats. When the colonizers just came in and they decided that they knew better than Mother Nature, and I will show you, yeah. This is a current map of all the weirs and dams that have been put in place since colonial people came to New South Wales, the state of New South Wales. So it looks like poor old New South Wales has chicken pox. I mean, I saw this map and I was just horrified that they had changed the waterways so much. And so all those weirs are just changed so much. But for us, it changes the purpose of that waterway that's been there for thousands of years. But it also changes our identity, because our durays, every duray, which is our mother's inherited country, is actually attached to a waterway. So we inherit at initiation, once the elders have said we're white, we can handle it, we've proven ourselves, we inherit a piece of water, a section of water, as part of our initiation. And so you can imagine what happens when, one, that creek is no longer there, or it's no longer running the same direction or shaped the same way. So it's really, it hurts your soul, because what they did is just change so much. So if we go back to why I'm talking about identity, even the section of your river, when you look at the diagonal symbols on people's shields and on the carved trees and even on the scarring on our bodies, it was about that section of river. So the zigzag or the bend or the S was about that inherited part of the river. So what happens when they change that river or that creek? It changes history. It's like somebody's gone back in time and changed, what's going to happen in the future. So here's the Wiradjuri shields, and you can see the zigzag, and you can see, particularly in this middle one here, that the flow of the river. So to change that now onto the other map is really going to change. We have to come up with different inherited patterns and look at the landscape as it is now, and try and restore some of that practice, which is, possible. It just it interrupts that handing down of knowledge, of course. Now back to this, yeah, so that's, you know, it's horrifying really to think that so much has been changed and not for the good. You know, we've got so many places that are in drought and not getting the flow of water, and so yeah, anyway, that's, yeah. So these are the type of maps I look at every day, couple of hours every day. They're really old, 1800s, you know, really early maps, and they're not all nice. They say terrible things about my people, and they had terrible names for places, like this is Murder Creek, this is Ghost Hill. I find graves, Aboriginal graves, you know, just awful names for our beautiful people. And how are we going for time, actually? 8:30. Oh, I better can think. So this is just a beautiful painting that I found, and it's the reeds were such protectors of the birds, the waterfowl. They were so important for Wiradjuri people. And so the reeds, we also created our flour, the cambunge. You know, we rolled it and squashed it and rolled it on our hip and created this amazing flour that for our bread, and so it's critically important for our survival. Yeah, so anyway, we're going to it's I've been talking too long, I'm really sorry. But yeah, it's so where we're at the moment, it's brilliant. We've found the 12 clan names, clan groupings. We're renaming along the river, or mapping the names along the river, and we're allocating the durays, and yeah, it's really exciting time. You know, but it's not my knowledge, and I want to say that very clearly. It's knowledge that's already there, and I'm just collecting it and gathering it and giving it to my elders, and they will confirm and decide what's to be done with it. But it's I think it's going to be really great for my people to be able to speak our land's names again, or as many as we can find anyway. So thank you so much for listening, and yeah, I appreciate you. Thank you so much. You're on mute. That's the most common statement done in the world at the moment.
Am I off mute now? Yep.
Yes.
I just wanted to say thank you so much, and it was such a rich presentation, and you know, I think that I think when we talked about this, you know, when we were planning, you were a little bit unsure about filling up the time, but you know, I think you've done so much research. It's really, you know, it was very easy to fill up the time. So. What I'd like to do, if you're happy with me to do this, Nola, is we could ask Fred to switch us to conversation mode and see what questions the group might have.
Oh, okay, cool.
Because I don't actually have any questions.
That's okay.
Well, I have lots of questions, but I know I can take up your space and time outside of this forum.
Yeah, no, that's cool. Hello. People are jumping in and out.
Yeah. Do we have any questions for Nola or comments about her presentation?
That's cool. Imagine the different time zones across the world. It'd be really strange. Hello, Lisa.
Hello. That's great.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
Yeah.
Oh, it's yeah, I think we're all getting so used to delivering. It's so weird to deliver stuff online and in the Zoom world, but you know, but I think I'm really loving technology and being able to connect with people across the world and let them know about knowledge and information and what's going on in Wiradjuri world, and it's very cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, I totally agree. So much, you know, to be shared from this part of the world. So it's lovely that we have, you know, wonderful people like you, wonderful Lisa and Nola to share. Because I think it's, really giving such a richness to this conversation. So, Geeta or Joan, do you have a question for Nola?
I just want to say I enjoyed the talk, and I enjoyed the very intimate way you have, or your people have, of naming places which could refer to the time an animal passing in the landscape, or the bend of the river, or the light on the water. I found it was a very poetic way of naming places and very inspiring. So it started making me think of, names of places again. So thank you.
No, my pleasure. I really didn't know how much we'd find in the place names until I started, a few years ago, and the knowledge that's within the names, it's extraordinary. The names on these places reveal the sacred places, the places we had mock battles, the places that are, again, our mother's country, but the places that our elders held their council. We found, so they're actually revealing our everyday cultural practice, and we didn't know that when we started. So it's mind-blowing, but it's also revealing the beauty of, that bend in the river shaped like a boomerang. I mean, you can imagine that, and I imagine that now. I see the name of a creek, and I just go, okay, it's a fast-running spring with reeds. Like, I can picture that, and I know what that creek looks like. It's incredible. It just reveals so much.
And it's a way of mapping the land from it's a way of mapping from time before, when the land is now changed. And I really think you should write a book on it. It's a really interesting topic, and it's a lot of interest, I think, and it will make people think about, the land in a different way, and to look at the land and see what was there before.
Yeah, I even just I'm sharing, I think, that connection about the rain falling on the ground to create life. I said that at another place, and a lady who's not Aboriginal, but she said, I will never look at rain again like the same, because that just makes rain more beautiful. And I said, well, that's what knowledge is about.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's some lovely comments in the chat, Nola. Tanya said, thanks for the very interesting presentation, Nola. It was fascinating to learn of the different place names and how the embedded water is in language. I was sad to see the New South Wales chicken pox. And Simone said, me too. And Richard's got a question. He said, I have a question about resistance and whether this focuses around language.
Resistance.
Yeah,
Richard, I think resistance, there's ways to undertake resistance, and for me, the standing in our own society with our own standards and rules creates a resistance against, you know, the colonisation of our culture and our people. So, but it's a kind way of doing it, and it's a gentle way. And it's also a way that we can share knowledge with the colonial people to hopefully maybe take on some of that and learn from that. So, but it is, you know, our standards and rules for living are our totemic ancestors, and how, you know, for example, if you think like the emu wren is the tiniest little bird. It's brown, it's not that pretty, it's got no colours, but it was one of the main birds taught by the elders to teach how to be a good family man to the young boys, because the emu wren is, as a male, sits with the nest and looks after the chicks, and when the chicks get older, they actually look after the next lot of chicks. And so they use that emu wren to teach how to be a good family person. So it's that sort of thing that, as every Australian or every person in the world, you know, that's a good lesson, you know, to look at the visual cues in your environment as teachers. And somebody that, because in our world, if you are native bee, if you're a bee has many strengths in that it is always attached to water, because bees don't go far from water, but they help spread pollen, so they create life. They look after their group, so they're always putting the group first, and so they're kind. So when you start to look at, when you get to know your ancestors, your totemic ancestors in your environment, and you realise, for us, we share strengths we swap these strengths when we need them. So if I need to be kind, I can call on the bee. If I need to be fierce, I can call on the snake, the brown snake. So these is what happens when you're in tune with your totemic ancestors, and that's resistance, Richard. But it's a gentle resistance, resistance by knowledge. But yeah, I don't know if that answers your question. But
so if a species disappear, you lose your identity.
Definitely. That's our mother's, that's an ancestor, that's a member of your family. And some of the place names, the Durays I found, there's one along the Murrumbidgee, which is Duray, which is having brush-tail wallaby. Well, that wallaby is no longer there. It no longer lives there. But, you know, it lives in other places of Australia, and, you know, to me that's an opportunity to say, well, this is its Mother Earth land. This is motherland, so we need to find a way to bring that brush-tail wallaby back here. And there's places where the koala is being lost, and lots of other animals. We have a terrible history in Australia of land clearing, of mammal extinction. One of the aunties down on the Murrumbidgee, because one of the Durays was a koala, and she said to me, we don't have koalas here. It's not very often, like we don't see them. And their guardian ancestor is the white cypress pine, because in every clan group we found there's a guardian ancestor, a central ancestor that sort of is connected to all the other ancestors and looks over that place. And that's the cypress pine in that area. And she said to me, and how is the koala attached to the cypress pine? And I'm just like, yeah, I don't know. They don't eat pine. They eat eucalyptus, you know. So I did some research and went and talked to a few people, and actually it's been found that koalas, because gum trees don't have a heavy canopy, like they're not very bushy, the canopy is quite sparse. In the heat, they require cypress pine forests to go and cool down. So they found the healthiest koalas actually live next door to the pine forests. And so I was so happy to go back to Auntie and say, I know that now. I know why. They need to crawl down their tree and go to those pine trails and just cool down. And I could feel them doing that now that I know that knowledge. Yeah. Anyway, yeah, so I don't know if there's no more questions. I don't want to keep you guys. Who knows? Lisa's got a question. Yes, ma'am.
I do, but I don't know if you can hear me.
I can.
You can?
Yes.
Oh, that's
perfect.
great. Right. Can I just shut the door?
Yes.
This is a krill question.
Oh, krill. Yes.
Antarctic krill. So what do you do when you're adopted by a species that has only recently been described or known about, like the Antarctic krill, the krill that live in Antarctica that feed our whales, our whale ancestors? So that's my totem.
You honour them. You find their story, and you honour them. How we honour our ancestors in Aboriginal culture is through art, through tattoo, drawing the symbol. We tell a story. We tell lots of stories. We teach with them. We teach about them. How are they helping? How are they contributing? How are they, what's their relationship to everything around them? We honour them in carvings. We honour them by eating them, but eating every part of them, by utilising every part and, for caring for them. So, just honour them in one of those ways, or all of those ways, really, because that's what, that's our responsibility, is how are we honouring our mother's country and our ancestors. And, that's, krill, magic. But, the krill and the whale, I mean, if that's not a moral story, nothing is it?
It's not.
Great capacity there for so much to do there. I think of a million stories for the krill.
That's beautiful.
Okay.
Do we have any other questions?
Yeah, I have one question regarding family names, First Nation family names.
Yeah.
And how do you articulate your family name with your totem? How do you manage this family name?
Yeah, okay. Yeah, because our names are fluid, like the water. And so it depends what you're asking me. So, Fred, if you're asking me my marriage status, I would have a name. I would say I am a bee. If you're asking me where I'm from, I would say I am Yurubin. I am a welcome swallow. So Yurubin Durai. So it depends what you're asking me. And so we have different names for different, requirements. And those names, usually if we have day names and night names, because we were terrified of the night. And if we always thought that if you spoke a person's name, well, those spirits, the bad spirits, would hear and they'd know where to go. And because we couldn't see them coming, we just would use generic names like girl or boy, you know. So we didn't. So it depends what time of day and what you want to know. And that's our names. And we had multiple, but they were all connected back to that same place.
That's great. All right.
So we were many, many animals and plants and sky world, which I think is pretty good, because who stays the same every day? Nobody.
Yeah, I love that fluidity. It's beautiful.
We're very much about being present. And, you know, I think the Aboriginal culture teaches that better than any other, is to how to be present, to live in that moment. You know, even our names are about that. And, you know, the place names, it's just, yeah, it's about absolutely living in the moment. I think that's why we're such great storytellers, because we live in the moment so much. We have a terrible memory, so we just keep telling these stories and songs.
I love it.
That's my theory. Anyway, so thank you, everybody. I really enjoyed it. I could talk about water and mapping and Aboriginal culture. Underwater, I could talk about it. I've been told I can anyway, but it's just something, it's such a joy. And yeah, when people want to know about it, it's an absolute thrill. So thank you so much. I appreciate you all very much.
Oh, it's been an absolute pleasure, Nola. Thank you very much. Everyone's giving you a clap, and there's lots of thank yous.
Excellent. All right. Okay. Well, if that's all, I shall, wish you all well. So, gambana.
Gambana.
Bye.